I remember the smell of smoke before I remember anything else. Pine wood, burning thatch, and beneath it, something I still can't name. Something that smelled like the end of everything I had ever known. I was 17 the night Alpha Caelum Dawnfang executed my family. I was hiding inside the root cellar beneath our kitchen floor. My mother had shoved me down there with a single look, not a word, not a goodbye. Just her eyes, fierce and final, telling me everything she couldn't say. Stay down. Don't make a sound. Live. I heard it all from below. My father's voice, steady even at the end. My older brother's cry, short and sharp, cut off before it could finish. My mother's silence. That silence was the worst part. I pressed my hands over my mouth and I did not scream. I didn't breathe properly for 3 years after that. They said the Ashwood pack had committed treason. They said we had conspired with enemy packs to overthrow the Dawnfang Council. They said the execution was justice. Justice. I used to trace that word in the dirt while I slept in barns and abandoned dens, surviving on what I could steal or trap. I turned it over like a stone, examining every angle, looking for the part that made sense. It never made sense. My father was not a traitor. My mother was not a traitor. They were the most honorable wolves I had ever known. But honor doesn't protect you when the most powerful alpha on the continent decides you are guilty. I survived because I was the youngest. Because I was hidden. Because my mother loved me more than she loved the chance of being believed. For 3 years, I lived in the margins of the world. Feral. Furious. Waiting. Then the summons came. By order of the Dawnfang Alpha Council, Seraphina Ashwood, last surviving heir of the Ashwood bloodline, is hereby commanded to present herself for a treaty marriage to Alpha Caelum Dawnfang. Refusal will be treated as an act of aggression against the sovereign pack. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I was deciding whether I was brave enough, or foolish enough, to obey. I went. Not because I was afraid of what would happen if I refused. I went because the man who killed my family had just handed me the only thing I had ever wanted. Excess. If I was going to be married to a monster, I was going to make sure it was the last mistake he ever made. I walked into that mating ceremony with fire in my chest and a blade strapped beneath my wedding gown. What I didn't expect was what happened when the doors closed and the ceremony ended. I didn't expect him to look at me with something that wasn't triumph. I didn't expect his voice to crack when he said my name. And I didn't expect the words that came out of his mouth to be the 4 most terrifying words I had ever heard. You need to run. Chapter 1. The dress was white, which felt obscene, honestly. It was long and fitted, with silver threading at the collar and hem, Dawnfang colors, worked into Ashwood lace. Someone had thought that was poetic. The blending of the 2 packs. The union of enemies. I thought it was a taunt. I stood in the dressing room of the Dawnfang estate and let the attendants fuss with my hair while I memorized the room. 3 windows. 1 door. 2 guards outside. I could hear their heartbeats through the wall. A vanity mirror angled so I could see the hallway behind me. Old habits. You're very calm, one of the attendants murmured. She was young, nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she pinned back my dark hair. Am I? I said. Most brides cry. I'm not most brides. She went quiet after that. The estate was enormous. Dawnfang territory sprawled across 3 mountain ranges, the largest pack holding on the continent. The main house alone had 4 to 7 rooms. I'd counted from the layout I'd memorized before arriving. I had spent 3 months preparing for today. 3 months learning everything I could about Caelum Dawnfang. His schedule, his habits, his allies and his enemies. The Dawnfang Alpha was 28 years old. He had taken control of the pack at 19 after his father's death, circumstances still debated in whispered circles. He was known for being cold, precise, and utterly without mercy. The execution of my family had been his 2nd year in power. A message, some said. A demonstration of what happened to packs that stepped out of line. I had read every account I could find. Every witness statement. Every council decree. And there was something in all of it that I kept returning to, a thread I couldn't ignore. Caelum Dawnfang had not personally issued the execution order. It had come from the Elder Council. Countersigned by him, yes. Carried out by his warriors. But the order itself, the initial accusation, the evidence presented, the judgment, all of it had originated from Elder Brennan Dross. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I intended to find out. It's time, said the head attendant. I looked at myself in the mirror. Dark hair swept up. Silver-threaded gown. Eyes the color of river stones after rain, gray-green, unreadable. My mother's eyes. I thought of her face in that last moment. Live, she had told me without words. I'm trying, I told her now. I picked up my small bouquet of white flowers, and beneath the flowers, hidden in the curl of my wrist, the handle of a thin blade, and I walked out to marry the man who had destroyed my world. The great hall was full. Wolves from a dozen packs had gathered to witness the Dawnfang Ashwood treaty marriage. Some looked curious. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked pleased in the particular way that powerful people look pleased when something small and broken has been brought to heel. I walked the long aisle with my chin up and my heartbeat controlled. Steady. Measured. Don't let them see anything. And then I reached the end of the aisle. And I saw him for the first time. Alpha Caelum Dawnfang was not what I expected. I had constructed a version of him in my mind over 3 years. A monster. Large and cruel-faced, with cold eyes and a brutal mouth. Something easy to hate at first glance. He was large. That much was true. Tall and powerfully built, broad through the shoulders in a way that his formal black jacket couldn't quite contain. Dark hair, slightly too long, pushed back from a face that was, devastatingly, not monstrous at all. He was sharp-featured and severe. A jaw that could have been carved from granite. A mouth pressed into a flat, unreadable line. Dark eyes, almost black in this light, that tracked my approach with an intensity that made the hair on my arms rise. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't look pleased. He looked like a man attending a funeral. I stopped in front of him, close enough to catch his scent for the first time. Cedar, gunpowder, and something underneath, something warm and dark and devastating that my wolf stirred toward before I could stop her. No, I told her firmly. His eyes moved over my face, slowly, searching. Then he leaned slightly forward, just a breath, and his voice came low and quiet, meant only for me. You shouldn't have come. I held his gaze. Too late, I said. The elder council chief began the ceremony, and I stood next to the man who killed my family and recited the words that bound me to him. The blade pressed cold against my wrist the entire time. Chapter 2. The reception was a performance. I played my part, smiled when required, spoke when addressed. Let them look at me, the last Ashwood, Culloden claimed, and saw what they needed to see. A broken girl in a pretty dress. None of them saw what I was actually doing. Counting exits. Reading alliances. Watching who spoke to Elder Dross and for how long. Brennan Dross was 70 years old and built like a man who had once been significant and never recovered from becoming less so. He was silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the particular stillness of a wolf who had learned to keep his aggression invisible. He smiled at me across the banquet hall with a warmth that didn't reach his eyes. The new Luna, he said, materializing at my side with 2 glasses of wine. The Ashwood girl. How remarkable that you're here. How remarkable, I agreed, taking the wine but not drinking it. His eyes dropped to the glass and something flickered in his expression. There and gone. Your family would have been proud, he said. My chest went cold. Would they? I said carefully. To see their bloodline preserved through such an honorable match. He tilted his head. Their sacrifice wasn't wasted. Sacrifice. As if they had chosen to die. As if it had been an offering rather than a slaughter. I looked at him for a moment that stretched just long enough to be interesting. You knew my father, I said. I did. A good man. Tragically misguided. He never seemed misguided to me. Dross smiled. Children rarely see their parents clearly. He touched his glass to mine in a small, private toast. Welcome to the Dawnfang pack, Seraphina. I do hope you'll be comfortable here. He moved away. I watched him go. Then I set my untouched wine down on a nearby tray and spent the next 20 minutes thinking about the word sacrifice and what it implied. I felt Caelum before I heard him. His scent reached me first, that cedar and dark warmth combination that my wolf kept trying to angle toward. And then his presence, the particular weight of it, like the air pressure changing before a storm. Elder Dross, he said quietly from beside me. What did he want? I turned to look at him. Up close, in the warm light of the reception hall, his face was even more disconcerting. He was watching Dross across the room with eyes that were carefully, professionally blank. To welcome me, I said. Did he? He called my family's deaths a sacrifice. I paused. Is that what you call it too? Caelum turned to look at me then. Really look. As if he was trying to read something written very small behind my eyes. No, he said. Just that. Nothing else. which was not the answer I expected. The execution order came from Elder Dross, I said. Not a question, a statement. Watching for his reaction. Something moved across his face. Gone before I could catalogue it. This is not the conversation for a reception hall, he said. Then when? He looked at me for another long moment. His jaw was tight. His hands, I noticed, were very still at his sides. The deliberate stillness of a man controlling something powerful. After, he said. After what? After the guests leave. His eyes went back to scanning the room. We need to talk. Tonight. Privately. Something in his tone made my pulse do something inconvenient. That sounds ominous, I said. It is, he said. And he walked away before I could respond. I stood there, my heart doing something complicated and unasked for in my chest, and I thought, this man is not what I built him to be. I wasn't sure if that made things better or worse. It made them more dangerous. I knew that much. The reception wound down over the next 2 hours. Guests departed in clusters. The great hall slowly emptied of silk and politics. I watched my new husband navigate it all with an economy of movement that was almost beautiful. He spoke when necessary. He didn't drink. He didn't smile. He kept his eyes moving, always scanning, always assessing, and occasionally those eyes would find me across the room and hold for just a fraction of a second too long. Stop noticing things like that, I told myself. He killed your family. My wolf went quiet. The last guests filtered out just past midnight. Attendants began clearing the hall. The estate settled into the particular hush of a large building that had emptied of people. And then his beater, a lean, watchful wolf named Vane who had been tracking my movements all evening, appeared at my elbow and said, "The Alpha is ready for you." I thought of the blade at my wrist. I thought of my mother's eyes. I followed Vane up the stairs and toward whatever came next. Chapter 3. The Alpha's private chambers were at the end of a long corridor on the estate's upper floor. Vane stopped at the door, knocked twice, opened it without waiting for an answer and stepped back, gesturing me through. I walked in. Vane closed the door behind me. The room was large and spare. A massive bed I immediately filed away as irrelevant. A fireplace burning low. 2 chairs by the window overlooking the mountain range, black peaks against a sky split with stars. And Caelum, standing at the window with his back to me, still in his formal jacket, hands braced on either side of the frame like he was holding the window open by force of will. He had taken off his Alpha seal ring. I noticed that first. It sat on the windowsill beside his left hand, and there was something about the deliberateness of that, removing the symbol of authority before speaking to me, that I filed away and examined silently. "Close the lock," he said, without turning. I turned and threw the bolt. Then I reached under my bouquet, which I was still carrying, absurdly, and drew the blade. It was thin. 4 inches. Good steel. I held it loose at my side and waited. He turned. His eyes went to the blade immediately. He didn't flinch. Didn't reach for anything. He just looked at it for a moment, then looked at my face. "Good," he said, quietly, almost to himself. "Good." I repeated. "You should be armed." He moved away from the window. Not toward me, to the fireplace, where he crouched and added wood to the fire with methodical movements. "I'm glad you thought to be." "I came here to kill you," I said. The words came out steadier than I felt. He didn't look up from the fire. "I know," he said. "That doesn't concern you. It concerns me less than what I need to tell you." He stood, turned. The firelight moved across the angles of his face, and he looked, for just a moment, in just this light, like a man carrying something he had been carrying for a very long time. "Sit down, Seraphina." "I'll stand." He looked at me for a moment. Then he nodded, as if that was exactly what he expected. "Your family was not guilty of treason," he said. The air in the room changed. My hand tightened on the blade. "Say that again," I said. "The Ashwood pack was innocent. The evidence against them was fabricated." He held my gaze without flinching. "I know, because I spent 2 years trying to find the proof before I understood I was already too late." The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, wind moved through the mountain pines. "You executed them," I said. My voice was very quiet. I wasn't sure that was better. I countersigned an order that I believed at the time was legitimate. By the time I understood what had actually happened, he stopped. Something crossed his face, jagged and unguarded and real. "I was too late." "You were too late." The words came out like something breaking. They were dead. My family was dead. Yes. And you, I stopped. Because the thing rising in my chest was not just grief and not just rage, but something underneath both of those. Something searching for understanding in a story that had never made sense. Who fabricated it? He was quiet for 1 second too long. Dross, I said. His eyes confirmed it before his mouth did. I believe so. I don't yet have proof that will hold in a full council judgment. His voice was measured, controlled. Your father discovered something. I don't know what. But he was close to bringing it before the council, and Dross moved first. What did my father discover? I don't know. You're asking me to believe. I'm not asking you to believe anything. He took a step toward me, 1 step, then stopped when he saw my blade hand shift. I am asking you to listen. And then I am asking you to run. There it was. The second time he had said it. Why? I said. Why do you want me to run? Why bring me here at all if? The treaty marriage was Dross's idea. His jaw was tight. He proposed it to the council 3 months ago. He wanted you where he could see you. He's afraid you know something. I was 17. I was hiding in a root cellar. He doesn't know that. He studied my face. Or perhaps he does, and he's hoping that being brought inside the pack will make it easier to. He stopped. Chose his next words. Silence you. Something icy moved through me. He wants me dead, I said. He wants to make sure you don't find what your father found. He moved to the desk in the corner, opened a drawer, pulled out an envelope, held it out to me. This is everything I have. Money, travel documents, and what small evidence I've gathered. If you leave tonight, take the East Passage, avoid the main roads. Stop, I said. He stopped. I looked at the envelope. At him. At the fire and the stars and the blade in my hand and the door behind me. You dragged me here, I said. You put me in this dress and made me stand in that hall and say those words. And now you want me to run. I want you to live. I've been living. My voice cracked on it, just slightly. For 3 years I have been surviving on my own in the margins of your territory, eating what I could catch, sleeping in places that would horrify you. I have kept myself alive through sheer blood-mindedness because I was waiting. For this. For a chance to be inside these walls and learn the truth. He was very still. And now you're handing it to me, I said. And you think I'm going to run. Something shifted in his eyes. You have a death wish, he said. I have a mission. I lowered the blade, not putting it away, just lowering it. You said you don't have proof. I'm a daughter of the Ashwood pack. If my father found something, there's a chance he left something behind. Evidence. Documentation. Something I might recognize that you wouldn't. Dross will be watching you constantly. Then we need to be smarter than Dross. He stared at me. You're not what I expected, he said. Quiet, like it had come out against his will. No, I said. Neither are you. The fire burned between us. The mountains watched through the glass. If you stay, he said slowly, we do this my way. You don't move without telling me. You don't confront Dross. You don't go anywhere alone in this estate until we know what we're dealing with. And you tell me everything you know. Everything, he agreed. I looked at him for a long moment, searching that severe, complicated face for the lie, for the trap, for the monster I had built across 3 years of fury. I found something worse. I found someone who looked as tired as I felt. All right, I said. I slid the blade back into its sheath against my wrist. And the real game began. Chapter 4. I did not sleep. Not from fear, or not entirely from fear. But because lying in that enormous bed in a room that smelled like cedar and mountain wind, with the knowledge that Caelum Dawnfang was in the adjoining room, made sleep feel like an impossible ask. My wolf was doing something unhelpful. She kept pressing toward his scent like a plant leaning toward light. Stop it, I told her. She didn't stop. Werewolf-mate bonds are complicated things. They don't care about timing. They don't care about appropriate feelings or family histories or the fact that I had arrived at this marriage with a knife and an intention to commit murder. They are about scent. About the particular way one wolf's chemistry aligns with another's in a way that bypasses reason entirely. I had read about it. Every wolf had. I had not expected to feel it here. By morning I was sitting at the window, watching the mountains go from black to gray to pale rose, cataloguing everything I knew and everything I needed to find out. My father, Aldrich Ashwood, had been alpha of a mid-range pack, not large, but respected. He had served on regional councils. He had been known for his fairness and his particular gift for negotiation. Elder Dross had been his contemporary, his political peer. If my father had found something about Dross, something worth killing over, it was a political something. A power something. Not criminal in the ordinary sense. What does a man like Dross have to hide? A knock at the connecting door. "Come in," I said, without turning from the window. Caelum entered. He'd changed from the wedding clothes, dark trousers, a plain shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow. He looked less like an alpha and more like a man who had also not slept. He carried 2 cups of coffee. He set one on the windowsill beside me without comment. I picked it up. "The estate has 11 active surveillance points," he said, dropping into the chair across from me. "Dross has access to 8 of them, officially through his Elder Council security clearance. The other 3 are mine alone." He paused. "He will know we spoke last night." "What will he think we spoke about?" "Hopefully, a new husband explaining the household to his wife." The corner of his mouth moved. It wasn't quite a smile. "You'll need to play the part for him." "What part?" "Wary. Resentful. Quietly adjusting." He looked at me over his coffee cup. "Not difficult, I imagine." "I've been playing parts for 3 years," I said. "What does Dross want me to do?" "Give up. Accept the situation. Gradually become comfortable enough to be observed and dismissed." He set down his cup. "He underestimates survivors. Something passed between us on that, quick and unspoken." "Tell me what you know about my father's last months," I said. He nodded slowly, as if he had been waiting for this. 8 months before the execution, your father made 3 trips to the archive in the capital. The archive holds council records going back 300 years, financial records, treaty documentation, territorial agreements. He was looking for something specific. He submitted formal request logs for documents related to the Northern Expansion Agreements, a series of territorial treaties from 40 years ago. He paused. Dross brokered several of those agreements. "What's in them?" "That's what I've been trying to determine. The relevant documents were reclassified to elder-level access 6 weeks before your father died." His voice was flat. "The reclassification was processed by Dross. He hid the evidence. He buried it. Technically speaking, the records still exist. They are in the restricted archive vault. But accessing them requires Elder Council authorization." He looked at me steadily. "Which I don't have." "You're the Alpha. The Elder Council operates on a separate authority structure. It was designed that way, to prevent any single Alpha from controlling the historical record." The frustration in his voice was controlled but present. "It's a system that works well when the elders are acting in good faith. And when they are not, it protects them perfectly." He was quiet for a moment. "Your father had a contact in the archive. Someone who helped him access the documents without going through official channels. I don't know who." I thought about that. "My father kept a journal," I said slowly. Caelum looked up. He kept it in a carved wooden box. Blue-gray wood, with a moon pattern on the lid. I had held that box 100 times as a child. Never opened it. It was private, but I knew its weight and smell and the small click of its latch. "When the house burned." "Our warriors didn't burn the Ashwood estate," he said. "The execution order was for the pack members, not the property." I went very still. "The house," I said. "It's still standing. As far as I know." I looked at him. He looked at me. "No," he said immediately. "If the journal is there. If Dross suspected your father of keeping records, he would have already. Then it's already gone and we lose nothing by looking." I leaned forward. "And if he didn't suspect it, if he thought a 17-year-old girl's father's private journal was irrelevant, then it might still be there. 3 years. Untouched." He was quiet, working through it. "It's a 3-day journey to Ashwood territory," he said. 2, if we ride." "Where?" he repeated. "You said I couldn't go anywhere alone in this estate." I held his gaze. "The same logic applies outside it." A long pause. His wolf. I realized I could feel the edges of it. The way you feel heat from a fire before you see the flames. Considered. "Wade. I'll tell Vane we're doing a circuit of the eastern boundary," he said finally. "Standard Alpha inspection. We'll leave in an hour. I need 20 minutes. Take 30. He stood. "And Seraphina?" "Sarah," I said. "My family called me Sarah." Something moved through his face. Quick and quiet and real. "Sarah," he said. "If anything feels wrong out there, anything at all, We come back. Immediately. No arguments. I wanted to argue with that on principle. I didn't. Agreed, I said. He nodded. Turned to go. Caelum, I said. He stopped. Why? I asked. Why are you doing this? You could ignore it. Pretend you didn't know. Let it stay buried. I watched his profile. What does it cost you to pursue this? He was quiet for a moment. Everything, he said. If Dross falls, half the council goes with him. The pack destabilizes. Rivals will move immediately. He turned to look at me, just partway. It could mean war. Then why? A longer silence. Because I signed that order, he said quietly. And I have to live with what I signed. He walked out and closed the door. I sat with that for a very long time. Chapter 5. The Ashwood estate sat at the edge of what had been our territory, a 2-story stone house with a grey slate roof and climbing ivy that had grown untamed for 3 years, reaching over windows and door frames like it was trying to reclaim the building for the earth. I had not expected it to hurt this much. We rode in silence for most of the journey. Caelum, myself, and Vane hanging back at a respectful distance that told me he knew more than he let on. The mountains gave way to lower hills as we moved east. Pine forests opened into meadowland. And then the stone house appeared through the tree line and I stopped my horse and sat very still. Take your time, Caelum said quietly. I'm fine, I said. Neither of us believed that. I was not fine. I was pressing everything down hard behind my sternum and walking forward because stopping was not an option. The front door was unlocked. The lock had rusted open, time doing what no one had bothered to do by hand. Inside, it was cold and damp and thick with the particular smell of a house that had held life and then stopped. Dust on the furniture. The chairs in the kitchen, still in their same positions. My mother's herb bundles, dried to nothing on their hooks. A cup on the counter, unwashed, that someone had set down and never come back to. My throat closed. Kitchen, I said. My voice came out steady. It surprised me. His study is upstairs, but he used to work at the kitchen table in the evenings. He liked to be where the family was. Caelum followed me in silence, reading the room with those careful dark eyes but not commenting on any of it. The table was bare. The desk in the study yielded nothing useful. Papers, correspondence, ordinary documents. Pack rosters. Trade agreements. Nothing hidden. I stood in the middle of my father's study and closed my eyes. Where would you put something you needed to hide? Not the desk. Too obvious. Not the safe. Dross's people would have checked the safe. Somewhere that looked like nothing. Somewhere only family would think to look. I opened my eyes and went to the bookshelf. 3rd shelf from the bottom. The books arranged by height, but one was slightly off. Not much. An inch gap on the left side of a thick blue volume where it didn't sit flush against its neighbor. I pulled it out. Inside the hollowed cover, a small carved box. Blue-gray wood. A moon pattern on the lid. My hands were shaking. That's it, Caelum said from behind me, quiet. That's it, I said. I opened the latch. The journal was inside. Worn leather cover, pages thick with my father's handwriting, cramped and precise, the way he wrote when he was thinking hard. And tucked between the last written pages and the back cover, folded small. A document. Old paper. Official seal. 40 years of age on it. Faded but legible. I unfolded it. Caelum moved beside me. His shoulder pressed against mine as we both leaned in to read. His warmth hit me unexpectedly, immediate and specific, the kind that made my wolf press forward again. I ignored her. The document was a deed. A territorial boundary agreement from 4 to 2 years ago. It assigned ownership of what was currently called the Norwood Hunting Grounds, rich territory, valuable territory, the kind every major pack coveted, to the Ashwood pack, in perpetuity. Signed by 3 elder witnesses, including Brennan Dross. The Norwood territory, Caelum said. Slowly. Something was working behind his eyes. Dross sold it, I said. After my family died. He sold it to the Greyvale pack. I remember hearing about it, a boundary dispute that was resolved quickly. I looked at him, because there was no one left from the Ashwood pack to dispute it. He needed your family gone to sell land that was legally yours, he said. Not a question, a conclusion. The scale of it settled over us both. Not treason, not conspiracy, not some grand political plot. Land. He killed my family for a territorial land deal. The rage came up in me so hard and so fast that it was nearly physical. My vision went sharp at the edges in the particular way that meant my wolf was very close to the surface. Caelum's hand came to my arm. Just a touch. Just fingers on my forearm, steady and deliberate. "Breathe," he said. I breathed. "This is the evidence," I said. My voice was tight but controlled. "A pre-existing deed supersedes any later sale. Dross committed fraud. He fabricated the treason charges to clear the title. It's enough to bring before the full council," he said. "Not just Dross, this implicates the Greyvale pack as well. Either they knew the sale was fraudulent or they can be used as pressure against Dross." He was quiet for a moment. "This could work." "There's a risk," I said. "There are several. Dross will move if he suspects we have this." Caelum's fingers were still on my arm. He seemed to realize it at the same moment I did. He withdrew his hand. Slowly, I noticed. Not quickly, like a man jerking back from a mistake. Slowly, as if he was doing it with some reluctance. "We need to move carefully," he said. "This goes nowhere near Dross before I have the full council aligned." I looked up at him. Close. We were very close, both leaning over the document. "Do you trust your council?" I asked. "I trust 3 of them absolutely." He held my gaze. "The rest are Dross's creatures." 3, I said. "That's not many." "No," he agreed. "It's not." We stood there for a moment, the document between us and the old house breathing around us, full of everything I had lost. "Your father was brave," Caelum said quietly, "to dig into this alone, without protection." "He didn't know he needed protection," I said. "He thought Dross was an ally." I looked at the journal still in my hands. He wrote to him. "Look." I flipped to an early entry. My father's handwriting, dense with thought. He asked Dross directly about the Norwood records. He thought they had been an administrative error. And Dross knew immediately what he was looking for. And acted immediately. I closed the journal. Pressed it against my chest. He trusted the wrong man. "Yes," Caelum said. Something in his voice made me look at him. He was watching me with an expression that was difficult to read. Complex in the way that faces are complex when more than one thing is happening at once. "You trusted the evidence Dross gave you," I said. "Yes," he said again. "You were also deceived. That doesn't absolve me of what I signed." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't." I paused. "But it changes the shape of it." We looked at each other over the ruins of my childhood home. Something shifted. Small and seismic. The kind of shift that doesn't announce itself. You just notice that the ground is slightly different than it was. "We should move," Vane's voice came from the doorway. "There's a rider on the south road. Dawnfang colors, one of Dross's messengers." My stomach dropped. Caelum turned. "How far?" he said. 20 minutes. Vane's eyes were sharp. "He'll be close enough to see our horses." I tucked the journal inside my jacket. "East Passage," I said to Caelum. He was already moving. "Stay with me," he said, and took my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, pulling me toward the back door at a run. Behind us, the Ashwood house stood quiet in the afternoon light, giving up its last secret. Ahead of us, 20 minutes of road and a messenger who would report our location to the man who had decided my family's lives were worth less than a land deed. I ran. Chapter 6. We made it back to the estate before the messenger. Just barely. Vane peeled off toward the stables. Caelum and I entered through a servant's entrance. His idea, delivered without explanation and implemented with the efficiency of someone who had clearly used alternative entrances before. I filed that away for later. "He'll know we went east," I said, as we moved through a back corridor. "He'll know we went somewhere," Caelum said. "The route inspection is a legitimate cover. He can't prove we went to the Ashwood estate without following us, and his messenger was too far behind. He'll assume. Let him assume." He stopped at a junction in the corridor. Turned to look at me. "The journal. Don't leave it in your room." "Where, then?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and briefly touched the lapel of my jacket, right where the journal sat pressed against my ribs. "Keep it there," he said. "For now." The touch lasted less than a second. My heartbeat did something entirely unauthorized. I was still managing that when we turned the corner and found Elder Dross standing in the main corridor, speaking with 2 of his personal guards. He looked up. He smiled. It was a smooth, practiced smile. The smile of a man who had been smiling at people he wanted dead for 40 years and had gotten very good at it. "Alpha. Luna." He inclined his head. I didn't know you were expected to return this afternoon. I was just checking in on the welcome arrangements, making sure our new Luna has everything she needs. She has everything she needs, Caelum said. His voice was completely flat. Wonderful. Dross's eyes moved to me with an attentiveness that made my skin prickle. You look flushed, Seraphina. Were you out riding? Boundary inspection, I said pleasantly. I wanted to understand the territory. Of course. A new home takes time to learn. His smile held. I hope you'll come to me if there's anything you need. I knew your father. I feel a certain responsibility to his daughter. That's very kind, I said. We looked at each other. He knew I was lying. I knew he was lying. And we both knew that neither of us could say so. I'll leave you to settle in, he said. Oh, and Alpha. The council has scheduled a full meeting for 5 days hence. Northern boundary matters. Your attendance is expected. I'll be there, Caelum said. Dross departed with his guards. The corridor cleared. I waited until his footsteps had faded before I let out the breath I was holding. 5 days, I said quietly. He's moving up his timeline, Caelum said. The council meeting, he'll have something prepared for it. Some move he wants to make while we're all in the same room. What kind of move? I don't know yet. He turned toward his study. I need to contact my council allies tonight. Discreetly. He paused. Looked back at me. The 3 who are loyal, I need to brief them. This is going to accelerate. And me. You'll dine with me tonight. Publicly. Play the adjusting new Luna. Something crossed his face that wasn't quite the controlled blankness he usually wore. Can you do that? I can play anything, I said. I know. He held my gaze for a moment. I'm sorry to ask it of you. The apology hit unexpectedly. Small and plain and clearly meant. Don't apologize for the strategy, I said. It's a good one. He nodded and went. I stood in the corridor and pressed my hand against the journal inside my jacket and thought about the way Dross had looked at me. He knows something, I thought. He doesn't know what I have, but he knows something. That smile. That word, responsibility. As if he owed me something. Or as if he was calculating the cost of what he still needed to do. I moved quickly, quietly, back toward my rooms. And as I turned the last corner, I nearly walked into Vane. He caught my arm, steadying, not threatening, and released it immediately. Sorry, he said. You were waiting for me, I said. He didn't deny it. He glanced down the corridor, then back at me with the look of someone deciding something. There's something you should know, he said quietly. About 3 months ago, before the treaty marriage was proposed. He hesitated. I overheard Dross speaking with one of his guards. I didn't understand it at the time. What did he say? He said. Vane lowered his voice further. He said the girl is the only loose end. The girl. Me. He knew I survived, I said. I think he always knew. Vane's jaw was tight. He proposed the marriage, Seraphina. Not to neutralize you. Not to bring you into alignment. His eyes were direct. To get you where he could finish what started 3 years ago. The cold settled through me completely. Dross hadn't invited me here as a political pawn. He'd invited me here as a target. Does Caelum know? I said. I told him 2 weeks ago. Vane paused. He agreed to the treaty marriage anyway. Because he thought. He stopped himself. What did he think? Vane looked at me steadily. He thought bringing you here, under his direct protection, was safer than leaving you out there alone where Dross could reach you without witnesses. I stared at him. He married me, I said slowly, to protect me. He married you, Vane said, because he was terrified of what Dross would do if he didn't. I turned that over. Caelum Dawnfang, who had signed the order that killed my family, who had spent 2 years quietly investigating what he'd done, who had begged me to run, not to get rid of me but because he was afraid of what was coming, who had taken my hand in my childhood home and run with me without hesitation. You should also know, Vane said, that whatever is between you, whatever the bond is doing, he paused carefully. He's been aware of it since the moment you walked into that ceremony. I opened my mouth, closed it. He hasn't said anything, I said. He wouldn't. Vane almost smiled. It was a small, complicated expression. He thinks you hate him. I stopped. Reorganized. I don't know what I think. No, said Vane. But you might want to figure it out. Because the next 5 days are going to require you to trust each other completely. He paused. And trust is harder when you're fighting yourself. He walked away. I stood in the corridor for a very long moment. My wolf, unhelpfully, said, "I told you so." Chapter 7. That night at dinner, I played my part. Wary but adjusting. Polite but distant. A woman learning the edges of her cage. Dross sat 2 seats down at the long table, watching me with patient, interested eyes, and I fed him exactly what he needed to see, a girl trying to make peace with her situation. Caelum played his part too. Formal. Measured. An alpha who had taken a political bride and had no particular feelings about it. The performance was convincing. What neither of us could fully control was the invisible thing between us. Every time his hand brushed mine reaching for the salt. Every time his voice dropped to register when he spoke to me directly. Every time my wolf leaned toward his scent. Cedar, mountain wind, and something warmer now, something that had not been there on the first day. Across the table, I saw Dross's eyes sharpen slightly. He was watching that too. Careful, I told myself. Whatever this is, don't let him use it. After dinner, when the table cleared and the house went quiet, Caelum found me on the upper corridor balcony, an outdoor walkway overlooking the mountain range, dark and vast and utterly indifferent to everything happening below. He came to stand beside me. Not close, just beside. "Dross has sent letters tonight," he said. 3 of them. My communications team intercepted the routes. We can't open them without alerting him, but we know they went to 3 Greyvale contacts. "His coordinating," I said, "for the council meeting." He leaned on the railing. "I've managed to reach 2 of my allies. They need the document formally presented. I can't brief them on something this significant verbally. How do we get it to them? Vane will carry copies tonight. I'll spend the next 2 days preparing the formal presentation." He paused. "It needs to be airtight. Dross will challenge every element." I thought about the document. The signatures. The seal. The 3rd signatory witness, I said. "The deed my father found. Dross signed it as a witness, but there were 2 others. Elder Myra Keene and a man called Drusel." "Drusel is dead," Caelum said. 12 years ago. "Myra Keene." A pause. "She retired from the Elder Council 8 years ago. She lives in the eastern foothills." He was quiet for a moment. "She would have known what the Norwood deed meant. If Dross moved against your family and she didn't speak. Either she didn't know," I said, "or she was complicit. Or she was afraid. We need to know which. Then someone needs to go see her." He turned his head to look at me. "Not you," he said immediately. "Not while Dross is actively." "Not me," I agreed. "Vane." He considered. Nodded. "It's possible. He can leave tomorrow, be back before the council meeting." We stood together in the cold air, stars enormous overhead, and I let myself, just for a moment, not be strategizing. Just standing on a mountain in the dark next to a man who was simultaneously the cause of everything I'd lost and the only person currently trying to fix it. The complexity of that was something I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Ask." "The bond." I kept my eyes on the mountains. "You feel it?" He was quiet long enough that I thought he might deny it. "Yes," he said. "Since the ceremony. Since you walked into the hall." His voice was careful. "Before that, perhaps. Your scent reached the antechamber before you entered. And you said nothing." "What would I have said?" He turned to face me, leaning sideways on the railing. "You came here to kill me. Reasonably." A quiet breath. "Telling you that my wolf had already decided we were." He stopped. Started again. It seemed cruel to add that to everything else. I looked at him. In this light, no firelight, just stars and the distant luminescence of snow on high peaks. His face was very clear. The severity of it. The lines of someone who had been carrying weight for a long time. "I don't know what to do with you," I said honestly. "I'm not asking you to do anything with me," he said. "I'm asking you to survive the next 5 days. And after." He was quiet. "After," he said slowly, "we see what's left. After Dross. After the council. After the truth is out." He paused. "If you want to leave, after all of that, I won't stop you. You would have Ashwood territory restored to you legally. Independence. Whatever you wanted." "What do you want?" I asked. He looked at me steadily. "That's not a question I'm allowing myself yet," he said. "It's not fair to ask it of you. Not given what I am to you. What are you to me?" He held my gaze. "The man who signed the order," he said. "Whatever else, that is also true." And you shouldn't forget it. The mountains breathed cold air over us. No, I said. I shouldn't. But I was starting to wonder if truth was more complicated than the version I'd carried for 3 years. He pushed off the railing. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow starts early. He went in. I stayed a little longer. The stars were indifferent and enormous, and somewhere under them, Elder Dross was writing letters and planning moves and thinking that he had Seraphina Ashwood exactly where he wanted her. He had no idea how wrong he was. Chapter 8. 4 days before the council meeting, Vane returned from the eastern foothills. His face told me everything before he spoke. He found Caelum and me together in the study. We had been there for 3 hours, going over the presentation of evidence, debating sequencing and legal precedent, and he stopped in the doorway and said, Myra Keene is dead. The room went very quiet. When? Caelum said. Recent. A week, maybe less. Vane's jaw was set. The neighbors said she'd been ill. A fast illness. Very sudden. Dross, I said. There's no proof, Vane said carefully. There's never proof with him. I looked at Caelum. He knew. He knew we'd find the deed. He knew Myra Keene was a loose end. I thought of Dross's smile in the corridor. Responsibility. He's been tidying up. If Myra is gone, Caelum said, his voice controlled, the document and the journal are the only physical evidence. 2 of my 3 council allies are briefed. The third. He paused. The third. I said. Something crossed his face. Elder Soren, he said. He's been unreachable for 2 days. Unreachable or unreachable? Vane said. I don't know yet. Caelum was very still. The kind of stillness that precedes something breaking. If Dross has gotten to Soren, then we have 2 votes, I said. Against however many Dross controls. The full council is 11 members, Vane said. Dross reliably controls 5. With Soren, we had 3. Without him, we present to a council where the man we're accusing has a majority. My voice was steady. I was feeling anything but. He'll table the evidence. Call it fabricated. The treaty with the Greyvale Pack has already been in place for 3 years. He'll argue established fact. Unless we can flip someone from his block, Caelum said. In 4 days, Vane said flatly. In 4 days, Caelum agreed. Silence. I looked at the document laid out on the desk between us. The faded seal. The signatures. My father's careful, hopeful handwriting in the journal margins, noting dates and record numbers, building his case one detail at a time. He had done this alone. He had done it without protection and without allies and without the Alpha's ear, and he had died for it. And I was here now, surrounded by more resources than he had ever had. And still. There's another way, I said. They both looked at me. We don't need to win the council vote, I said slowly. We need to break Dross's majority. I paused. One of his 5, which one is most exposed? Caelum and Vane exchanged a look. Elder Tala, Vane said. She's new, appointed 8 months ago. She was Dross's nomination. But she's been uncomfortable in the role. She's asked more than once about the Norwood boundary dispute. I think she doesn't know what she got herself into. Then she's not a creature, I said. She's a mistake he made. I looked at Caelum. I'll talk to her. You can't approach her without Dross knowing, he said immediately. Then it has to look accidental. I thought fast. A social call. New Luna getting to know the council members. I'll invite the women of the council to tea. Tala will be among them. I held his gaze. 10 minutes. That's all I need. If she reports to Dross, then we lose nothing we haven't already lost. I paused. But if she's genuinely uncomfortable, 3 votes can call for a full council review, Vane said slowly. Even Dross can't override a formal review request. It changes the entire dynamic, Caelum said. He can't simply vote down evidence. He'd have to actually debate it. He'd be on defense, Vane agreed. Caelum was looking at me. You'd be putting yourself directly in his line of sight, he said. I'm already there, I said. I have been since I walked in the door. He held my gaze. Something working behind his eyes, calculation and something else. Something less controlled. Tomorrow morning, I said. Social tea. Can you arrange the invitations tonight? A long pause. Yes, he said. Then we have a plan. I started gathering the documents to resecure them. His hand covered mine on the papers. Brief, warm, deliberate. Sarah, he said. I looked up. If this goes wrong tomorrow, he stopped. Try it again. If Tala reports to Dross immediately, you need to be ready to move fast. I know. I mean, his jaw tightened. I don't mean run. I mean, something in him gave slightly. I mean I will not leave you exposed. Whatever happens in that meeting. Whatever Dross tries. His hand pressed briefly on mine. I'm with you. My chest did something I had specifically told it not to do. I know, I said again. Softer this time. He withdrew his hand. But his warmth stayed for a long time after. Chapter 9. Elder Tala was 26 years old and looked like she was perpetually standing slightly too close to a fire. Always slightly flushed, slightly tense, eyes moving a beat too fast for someone who was comfortable with where she was. She arrived to tea third, between Elder Fen and a senior council secretary whose name I memoized and probably would never need. I played hostess with the particular warmth of someone who had decided to be warm, not performed, but committed. Like choosing a temperature and holding to it. Tea. Small cakes. Conversation about the estate, about the mountains, about a harmless tour of the lower library that I suggested with an ease I did not feel. I watched Tala. She was watching me too, with the careful attention of someone who was trying to figure out if I was what I appeared to be. That was promising. I waited until Elder Fen was engaged in a long conversation about the estate's wine cellar with the secretary before I drifted to the window where Tala was standing with her tea cup, looking out at the mountains. You knew my father, I said quietly. Not a question. She looked at me. By reputation, she said carefully. He was a good man, I said. Honest. Probably too honest for the world he was operating in. A pause. Something in her face shifted. The Norwood territory, she said. Very quietly. Just the words. Like testing them. My pulse jumped. You know about it, I said. I've asked questions about it. Her fingers tightened around her cup. I was told it was a settled matter. By Dross. Another pause. When I was nominated to the council, she said, in a voice barely above a murmur, I was told my role was to support elder leadership in maintaining pack stability. She looked at me sideways. I believed that was what I was doing. And now? She was quiet for a moment. I have been an elder for 8 months, she said. In that time, I have seen 3 decisions that I could not fully explain and have been told not to question. A woman I respected, Elder Myra Keene, has just died very suddenly. Her jaw was tight. And the new Luna, who has every reason to be hostile to this pack, is speaking to me at a private tea as if she trusts me. I don't trust easily, I said. No. She looked at me. But you're here anyway. I'm here because I think you asked the right questions and were told to stop, I said. And I think that bothered you. A long silence. Outside, Elder Fen was still monologuing about the wine cellar. If I were to request a formal council review of a matter, Tala said quietly, hypothetically, I would need to be certain the evidence was real. It is. And I would need to be certain I had protection afterward. You would have the Alpha's full protection. I held her gaze. And you would have the truth, which is something no one can take away once it's in the open. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she set down her teacup. I need to see the evidence, she said. Tonight, I said. After the other guests leave. She nodded. Barely. A small movement. And we both turned back to the room as if nothing had happened at all. That evening, with Tala seated across from him in the study, Caelum laid out the full case. I watched her face as she read the deed. As she went through the journal, as she understood the shape of what Dross had built. She didn't cry, but her hands shook when she set down the documents. The fraud is clear, she said. A deed predating the Greyvale sale would void the transfer entirely. She was thinking fast, I could see it. And if the treason charges were fabricated to clear the title. Then the execution order was issued under false pretenses, Caelum said, which implicates the full Elder Council at the time, some of whom are still in their positions. Not all of them knew, I said. Some were deceived as thoroughly as anyone. Tala looked at me. You're generous, she said. Considering. I'm practical, I said. Dross is the architect. The others are leverage. A pause. I'll request the formal review, she said. That gives you 2 council allies plus myself, 3 votes. That triggers the mandatory review process. It forces the meeting to become a formal inquiry, Caelum said, rather than a standard council session. Dross cannot suppress evidence in a formal inquiry. Tala was very still. He will know immediately that someone inside his block broke. He'll suspect you, I said. Yes. She squared her shoulders slightly. He will. A pause. He would have gotten to me eventually anyway. Men like Dross always do. She looked at us both. 3 days. We have 3 days to prepare before the meeting. She stood. I'll submit the review request in the morning, she said. Under my own signature, without prior discussion with either of you. It will look more organic. Thank you, Caelum said. She looked at him steadily. Don't thank me. Just win. She left. The study was quiet. I let out a long breath. Caelum sat back in his chair and rubbed a hand over his face. A startlingly human gesture from a man who was usually so controlled. 3 days, I said. 3 days, he agreed. I looked at him across the desk. The documents between us. The fire behind him. And something in the weight of the moment, in the particular quality of the silence, made me say what I had been thinking since the balcony. When this is over, I said. He looked up. When Dross is finished and the territory is restored and the truth is on record. I paused. What do you want to happen? Not what's fair. Not what I'm owed. What do you want? He was very still. Sarah, he said quietly. Tell me. A long silence. I want you to stay, he said. The words were very quiet and very plain, which somehow made them worse, or better, than anything eloquent would have been. Not because of the bond, he said. Or not only because of the bond, but because, he stopped, started again. Because you are the most formidable person I have ever met, and I think I have been looking for someone to stand beside instead of behind for a very long time. My heart was doing complicated mathematics. I have not earned that, he said. I know that. I may never earn it. But you asked what I wanted, so. I looked at him. The severe, careful, complicated face of a man who had been wrong in the worst possible way and had spent 2 years quietly trying to find how to make it right. Ask me again, I said. After. His eyes held mine. After, he agreed. Chapter 10. 2 days before the council meeting, I woke at 3 in the morning to the sound of a door. Not my door, further down the corridor. A soft sound, barely audible. The kind of sound that only matters if your wolf has been listening even in sleep. I was up and moving before I was fully awake. The corridor was dark. The estate slept. Halfway to Caelum's study, the sound had come from that direction. I caught a scent. Unfamiliar. Sharp. Chemical under the natural wolf smell. Not pack, my wolf said. Not familiar. Wrong. I didn't stop. I moved faster, keeping to the walls, bare feet silent on the stone floor. The study door was open a crack. I pressed myself to the wall beside it and listened. One heartbeat inside. Moving carefully. The soft crinkle of paper. Not Caelum. His heartbeat was distinctive now. I realized with a jolt of surprise that I had already memoized it. I pushed the door open. A man I didn't recognize was at Caelum's desk, rifling through the locked document drawer, which was no longer locked. He was young, pack-marked on his wrist with Dawnfang colors, but his scent wasn't right. Dawnfang pack members smelled like the territory, like pine and stone. This man smelled like somewhere else underneath the pack mark. He saw me. Everything happened very fast. He lunged. I stepped sideways and dropped, combat muscle memory from 3 years of surviving alone, and his momentum carried him past me. I came up with the blade from my wrist. He was fast, bigger than me, but I was angrier. We collided against the bookshelves. The door burst open behind me. Stop. Caelum's voice, low and absolute, carrying the alpha tone that pressed against every wolf instinct like a physical weight. The man froze. I stepped back, breathing hard, blade still up. Caelum was in the doorway, shirtless, dark eyes taking in the scene in 2 seconds flat. He moved past me without looking at me, directly to the man, who was pressed against the bookshelf looking at Caelum with the particular expression of a wolf who knows it has made a terrible mistake. Sit down, Caelum said. He sat a day. Vane appeared behind Caelum a moment later, also clearly woken from sleep, already alert. He was in the document drawer, I said. The lock was already open. Caelum crouched in front of the man. The alpha tone was gone, replaced by something quieter and more frightening. Who sent you? He said. The man said nothing. Caelum waited. Your mark is Dawnfang, Caelum said. But your scent is Grey Veil. You've been in my pack for how long? 3 months. 4. Dross placed you. He paused. Where were you told to take what you found? Nothing. His looking for the deed. I said from behind. Caelum didn't look at me. Yes. He stood. Vane, secure him. Quietly. He turned. Nothing leaves tonight. Rotate the guards. Vane moved. Caelum finally looked at me. I was still holding the blade. You're fast, he said. I've had practice, I said. His eyes moved over me, checking, assessing, and something in his expression shifted into something that was not the controlled alpha face. You're not hurt. I'm fine. He could have. He didn't. I lowered the blade. Are the documents? The important ones are with me, he said. Not in this drawer. I breathed. Dross knows we have something, I said. He sent someone before the meeting. He's panicking. Panicking men make mistakes. Panicking men are also dangerous, I said. He looked at me for a moment. Thank you, he said. It was the second time he had said it tonight, and the second time it landed in a way I wasn't prepared for. Don't thank me, I said, echoing Tala from 2 nights ago, which almost made me want to smile. Almost. He tilted his head slightly. Then what should I do? He said. We were standing in the study in the middle of the night. Close, the crisis adrenaline still crackling between us. His scent was everywhere, cedar and warmth, and something that my wolf had fully categorized at this point as mine, which was deeply inconvenient and apparently non-negotiable. Sleep, I said, while there's still time. Are you giving the alpha an order? He said. And his mouth moved, just slightly, into something that was almost, genuinely, a smile. The first real smile I had seen from him. Something hit me in the center of my chest. Someone has to, I said. I walked out, down the corridor, into my room. I sat on the edge of the bed with the blade in my lap and waited for my pulse to stop doing what it was doing. It took longer than it should have. Outside, the mountains were dark and enormous. 1 day left. Chapter 11. The council chamber was in the oldest part of the Dawnfang estate, a circular room with high ceilings and no windows, lit by iron chandeliers and smelling of centuries of decisions. The 11 council seats arranged in a half-circle, with the alpha's position facing them. Elder Tala had submitted her review request that morning. The energy in the chamber when we entered told me that Dross had already heard. He was seated, composed, silver-haired and still. But something around his eyes was tighter than I had seen before. A calculation working fast underneath the surface. He looked at me when I entered with Caelum. I gave him nothing. The formal review request has been filed, said Elder Ferris, the council secretary, one of Dross's people, but obligated by procedure. Under council charter, a formal inquiry supersedes standard agenda. Elder Tala, you may present your basis. Tala stood. Her voice was steady, steadier than I expected. I am requesting a formal review of the Norwood territorial transfer executed 3 years ago, on the basis of newly presented evidence that may indicate the transfer was made in violation of pre-existing legal deed. The chamber was very quiet. Additionally, she said, I am requesting that this review encompass the evidentiary basis for the Ashwood treason charges that preceded the Norwood transfer, on the grounds that the 2 matters may be directly connected. Dross smiled. The smile of a man who had been prepared for this. A serious allegation, he said, his voice warm and reasonable. The Ashwood matter was fully adjudicated 3 years ago. The council does not relitigate settled. The council does not protect settled fraud, Caelum said. The room went still in a different way. The evidence, Caelum said, standing. Sarah. I brought the documents forward, laid them on the central table. The original deed, authenticated. Copies for each council member. The journal, with relevant passages marked. I watched Dross as the members examined the deed. He was controlled, beautifully controlled, but his scent changed. Fear under the cedar, not his cedar, just a coincidence of chemistry, something sharp and animal that I caught even across the room because my wolf was specifically, deliberately, reading him. He knew the deed was real. A 42-year-old document, Dross said pleasantly, of uncertain provenance, presented by the woman with the greatest personal motive in this room to damage my reputation. The seal is authenticated by 3 independent archivists, Caelum said. I had it verified before this meeting. A pause. The provenance is the Ashwood estate, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice came out very clear. My father found it in the council archive. He was killed before he could present it. The document was reclassified to restricted access 6 weeks before his death, a reclassification processed by Elder Dross. Administrative, Dross began. The reclassification log shows your personal authorization code, Caelum said, which I obtained from the archive director this morning. The room shifted. Not all at once. But I could feel it, the particular moment when 5 members of the council who had been prepared to follow Dross's lead looked at the documents and looked at Dross and began to make quiet internal calculations about who they were actually standing behind. The Norwood territory, said Elder Fenn, one of Dross's block, looking shaken. This deed would mean the territory was never legally available for transfer. It was not, I said. My family's execution cleared the title. If the execution order was issued on fabricated charges. There is no proof the charges were fabricated, Dross said. His voice was still controlled. But Bailey, you have a land deed. You do not have. We have this, Vane said from the doorway. He walked in. And beside him walked a woman I had not expected to see. Elder Myra Keene. Old and thin and using a cane, but walking. Alive. The sound Dross made was almost inaudible. She was moved, Caelum said quietly. 3 weeks ago, when we first suspected she might be at risk. Her illness was staged. Vane's people arranged it. He paused. She has been waiting. I had not known this. I looked at him. He caught my look and held it for just a moment. I didn't tell you, his eyes said. Because if you didn't know, you couldn't give it away. Myra Keene stood in the center of the chamber. I signed the Norwood deed as a witness, she said. Her voice was old but steady. I knew the land was Ashwood territory. I knew what the deed meant. She looked at Dross. I also knew that when Brennan filed the reclassification, the only reason was to bury it. I said nothing because I was afraid. She paused. Aldrich Ashwood was not a traitor. I have known that for 3 years. I am saying it now, on the record, before this full council. Silence. Dross stood. His composure was failing. Not dramatically, but at the edges, where a life's worth of careful control was finding the limit of what it could hold. This is a coordinated attack, he said. The Alpha, a compromised new mate, and a senile former elder. Elder Keene, said Elder Ferris slowly, is a credentialed former council member whose testimony carries legal weight in formal inquiry proceedings. He was reading from the charter, carefully, with the particular energy of a man choosing the correct side at the last possible moment. The evidence is sufficient for formal criminal charges, Elder Talla said. I so move. Seconded, said Elder Pren, another of Dross's block, who had been doing quiet calculations since the deed appeared. 3 votes became 5. Dross looked around the room. He looked at me. Something moved in his face that I had never seen before. Not fear, exactly. Something older. Something that looked, for one fractured moment, like the understanding that the thing you have spent 40 years building is about to come apart. You, he said, quietly, to me. My father found the truth, I said. I just carried it here. The alpha tone in Caelum's voice, when he spoke, was the quietest it had ever been, which somehow made it the most absolute. Elder Brennan Dross, he said, you are formally suspended from council pending criminal inquiry. Vane. Dross's guards, when they moved toward their employer, found that the exit was already secured. He went quietly. In the end, men like Dross always did. The chamber erupted around me. I stood in the center of it, voices, movement, the particular noise of a political structure realigning itself rapidly, and I was very still. Caelum appeared beside me. You didn't tell me about Myra Keene, I said. No, he said. You thought I'd react if I knew she was alive. I thought you'd feel hope, he said. And hope is readable. A pause. I'm sorry. I looked at him. Don't apologize, I said. You keep saying that. Because it was the right call, I said. Even if I hate that it was. The corner of his mouth moved. Sarah, he said quietly, underneath all the noise around us. It's done. I looked at the empty chair where Dross had been sitting. 3 years of cold root cellars and stolen food and sleeping with one eye open and building rage into something sustainable. My mother's eyes. Live. It's done, I said. And then I had to press the back of my hand to my mouth because something enormous was moving through me that I absolutely could not let out in the middle of a council chamber. His hand came to my back. Solid. Steady. Not asking anything. Just there. I breathed through it. Come on, he said quietly. Let Vane handle the aftermath. We walked out of the chamber together. Chapter 12. The estate was quiet that night. A different quiet from the first night. Not the held-breath silence of something dangerous waiting to happen, but the exhale of something finished. Something past. I sat on the balcony overlooking the mountains with a blanket and a cup of cold tea I had forgotten to drink, and I tried to locate myself inside the enormity of what had happened. My family would have their names restored. Formally. The council had voted, unanimously, in the end, to strike the Ashwood treason conviction from the record. The Norwood deed would be submitted to legal review, which would almost certainly result in the territory reverting to Ashwood bloodline. To me. Myra Keene had embraced me in the corridor after the session. She was small and frail, and she smelled of lavender and old stone, and she had whispered against my hair, "Your father would have been so proud of you." I had cried then, briefly, just briefly, into the shoulder of an old woman who had let her fear keep her silent for 3 years and had chosen, in the end, to be brave enough. I didn't hold the years against her. There was nothing left in me for holding things against people. I heard Caelum before I saw him. His footstep on the balcony threshold. He had learned, in the past week, to make enough noise that I didn't startle. A small, deliberate consideration. Another one to add to the list. He brought his own blanket and sat in the other chair, a few feet away, and looked at the mountains. We were quiet for a while. "The Norwood territory," I said eventually, "when it's legally restored. It will be yours," he said. "I know." I turned my cup in my hands. "I'm trying to decide what I want to do with it." A pause. 3 years ago I would have said I wanted to rebuild the Ashwood pack. Move back. Restore everything. And now, I looked at the mountains. "The pack was my family," I said. "The pack is my family, me and Lyra." He turned his head. "Your sister," he said. I looked at him. Something shifted in his face. "Vane's intelligence work found her 6 weeks ago," he said carefully. "She's alive. Living with a small group in the Western River lowlands." He paused. "She's been waiting for you." I stopped breathing. "She's alive," I said. "She's alive," he confirmed. "Lyra, my baby sister, who had been 7 years old the night our mother hid me in the root cellar, who I had to assume, was gone, whose name I had kept like something sacred and private and half-broken in my chest for 3 years. "Why?" I started. "I didn't tell you," he said, "because I needed to be certain before I put that hope in front of you. Confirming identity in situations like hers takes." He stopped. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." I stood up. He stood up too, instinctively. "Where is she?" I said. "Vane can have her here within 3 days," he said. 4 at most, depending on her willingness to travel. I turned away from him, toward the mountains, and pressed both hands to my face. My sister was alive. She had been alive the whole time, and I had been. He moved. I heard it, not away, toward me, and then his arms came around me from behind, careful and deliberate, not demanding anything, just there. The way he had been there in the council chamber. The way he had been there in my childhood home. The way he had, without my noticing the exact moment it happened, become the person I looked for first when something happened that I needed to anchor to. I turned inside his arms, pressed my face against his collarbone. Let it break, just this once, just here, just for a moment. The enormous careful structure that I had been holding since I was 17 years old in a root cellar, learning to be something that could survive. He held me. He didn't say anything. Didn't try to fix it or explain it or manage it. Just held me in the mountain night while the stars watched and the wind moved through the pines below. When I straightened, finally, I didn't move out of his arms. He looked down at me. "You asked me," I said, "to stay. After." "I remember." "It's after," I said. His expression was very still. "Waiting." "I'm not staying because of the bond," I said. "Although I'm apparently not going to win any arguments with my wolf about that." A small, raw almost laugh. "I'm staying because..." I paused, finding the honest words. "Because you are also not what I expected. Because you spent 2 years trying to fix what you'd done without telling anyone. Because in the past week you have caught me every time I've almost fallen apart without making me feel like less for it." I looked up at him. "Because I think I want to learn who you are when there's not a crisis happening." "That may be a disappointment," he said. "I'm told I'm very boring without a crisis." "Who told you that?" "Vane. Regularly." I laughed. A real laugh. Short and surprised and a little rusty from disuse. His eyes changed when I laughed. Something came into them that I thought might be wonder. "You should do that more," he said quietly. Give me reasons to, I said. He cupped my face in both hands. Carefully, like something that might be real if he didn't rush it. Every day, he said. I intend to try. He kissed me, slowly, like someone who had been thinking about it for a while and wanted to do it justice. Cedar and warmth and something that was just him, specific and irreplaceable and mine in the way that the bond had been insisting on since the first moment I caught his scent. My wolf went very, very quiet. Satisfied, I thought. Finally, when we broke apart, the mountains were enormous around us and the stars were indifferent and the wind moved through the pines below, and none of it had changed. But I had. Slightly. In a way that felt like opening a window in a room that had been closed for a long time. Not fixed. Not healed. Not suddenly simple. But open. Lyra arrived on the 4th day. She was 10 years old. She had been 7 the last time I saw her, and she was tall for her age, with our mother's dark eyes and our father's careful, measuring expression. She came up the estate drive with Vane and 2 of his scouts, wearing boots that were slightly too big and carrying a small pack like someone who had learned to carry everything they owned. I was waiting at the door. She saw me and went very still. Then she ran. I went down the steps to meet her and she hit me at full speed and we both went down to the grass laughing. Or I was laughing and she was crying, or we were doing both simultaneously. I wasn't sure, and she smelled like river water and wood smoke in herself, which was the most specific and beloved smell in the world. I knew you weren't dead, she said fiercely into my shoulder. I knew it. You were right, I said. You were always right. I waited. I know. I held her tighter. I'm sorry I wasn't faster. You got here, she said. That's what matters. I looked up from where I was kneeling in the grass. Caelum was standing in the doorway of the estate. He had seen us coming and stepped back to give the moment space. That careful, deliberate consideration that I was beginning to understand was simply how he moved through the world, noticing what people needed and quietly providing it. He caught my eye. I mouthed, "Thank you." He dipped his head slightly. Then he turned and went back inside to give us time. Later, much later, after Lyra had been fed and installed in a room she declared extremely excessive but acceptable, and had fallen asleep mid-sentence, I found him in the study. He was sitting by the fireplace with a book he wasn't reading, watching the fire. I sat in the opposite chair. We didn't speak immediately. The formal proceedings will take several months, he said finally. Dross's full trial, the Norwood restoration, the council restructuring. He looked at the fire. It won't be quiet. I'm not afraid of noise, I said. No. A pause. Your sister will need stability. A home base, even if you eventually rebuild in Ashwood territory. I was thinking, I said, that this estate is extremely large. He looked at me then. It is, he said carefully. And it would be cruel to make a 10-year-old travel between territories for the next several years of political proceedings. Extremely cruel, he agreed. So pragmatically speaking. Pragmatically, he said, and his mouth was moving again in that almost smile that I was beginning to collect. She'll need people, I said. Things to do. Probably tutors. She's been living wild for 3 years and she's sharp as glass, and if we don't channel that, she will absolutely take over this estate within a month. She sounds like someone else I know, he said. I met his eyes. The bond, I said. Do you want to formalize it? Properly. Not the political ceremony, the actual bond ceremony. He was very still. I want, he said slowly, whatever you want. Whatever pace you want. Whatever shape you want it to take. He paused. I have time, Sarah. I'm not going anywhere. Good, I said. Neither am I. The fire burned between us. Outside, the mountains held the sky. I thought of my father's careful handwriting in the margins of his journal, building his case with patience and honesty and no protection, in a world that was going to kill him for it. I thought of my mother's eyes. Live, she had said. I told her. I really, finally, Vane found us still there when he came to report on Dross's preliminary hearing 2 hours later. Sitting on opposite sides of the fireplace, a comfortable silence between us, Caelum's book still unread in his lap. He stood in the doorway for a moment. He had seen the Alpha through a lot of things. He had never seen him look like that. Like a man who had put something down that he had been carrying for a very long time. Like a man who had, against every reasonable expectation, arrived somewhere he thought he didn't deserve. Vane reported the preliminary hearing details, accepted the Alpha's questions, and left. In the corridor, walking back to his post, he allowed himself one small, private smile. About time, he thought. Then he went back to work. The formal record, filed 3 months later with the full Elder Council, stated the following. The treason conviction of the Ashwood pack is hereby vacated in its entirety. The Norwood territorial deed is restored to Ashwood bloodline inheritance. All connected transfers executed under fraudulent pretense are deemed void. The Dawnfang-Ashwood treaty marriage is reclassified from political arrangement to sovereign mate bond, effective upon mutual declaration, filed on this date by Alpha Caelum Dawnfang and Luna Seraphina Ashwood Dawnfang. Lyra, who had been sitting in on the filing as a learning experience, read that last part 3 times. Then she looked at her sister. You hyphenated, she said. I like my name, Sarah said. Fair, Lyra said, and stole another of the record clerk's biscuits. 3 things remained, after everything. A girl who had survived because her mother loved her. A man who had spent 2 years trying to do right by a wrong he couldn't undo. And a bond between them, strange and inconvenient and early and true, that had apparently decided they were meant for each other before either of them had the sense to agree. Some things don't ask permission. Some things just choose. What part stayed with you the most? Was it the moment he begged her to run, and she refused? The night she laughed for the first time and he looked at her like she was something worth protecting? Or the girl in the root cellar, pressing her hands over her mouth, choosing to survive? Tell us in the comments. And if this story found you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded. The truth always outlasts the men who bury it.